Man, this is such a big thing that I wanted to cover. I mean, it's so large in scope that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to put all the points together and all in the right sequence. But I'm hoping to kind of get to a general conclusion. So let me start with the idea of economics and a term that I've coined myself in recent years, Metanomics. Now, meta comes from the ancient languages, which is a term that means more, greater, bigger, all-encompassing. So when I started this journey, personal journey, 25 years ago, I wanted to understand why. What the heck happened to me specifically? And so, I guess like all quiet, inquiring minds, I just sucked in as much information as I possibly could. And I went through multiple down periods, recessions, and I learned a lot through just reading and observing and trying to figure out myself. But eventually I decided I was going to formalize it. And quite frankly, I was naive enough to believe that the society had the answers for me. So I wanted to formalize what I thought I was starting to understand. So out of a period of desperation, between 2013 and 2017 here in America, I went to San Joaquin Gilded College and I got those 3 associate degrees. And amongst that, I did a whole bunch of, I did quite a number of subjects in economics and in accounting, because I wanted to understand what all these other geniuses from the past actually knew about how this stuff worked. And I wanted the answers. I wanted to see, well, you know, what's the solution? So I studied these subjects and I studied them in detail and I got A's and I had kids. I mean, I was like 55-year-old, I guess, doing this as a mature age, and I had kids doing it. Just all kind of gravitating around me because I was asking really astute questions in class and my professors liked me. And I got to a point where I went through all the textbooks and I did all the assignments and I did well on all the exams. And I felt like there's something really lacking here. I still don't really understand why these incredibly bad periods befall people. And really at the time, I came to a conclusion: every 7 to 10 years, a percentage of people just get cast off, pushed out of the system. And that's the way the system works. Why does the system work that way? So I had all of this academic knowledge. For instance, when I asked my question, Can you define what is the business cycle? The guy didn't even know what I was talking about. I mean, did I need to go on there from associates to Harvard to understand it? I don't know. I kept up my private inquiries independent of the college. And eventually I came to understand there wasn't only a business cycle, boom, bust, expansion, collapse, but there was a credit cycle, and that credit cycle underpinned or drove the business cycle. But there was something more I needed to understand beyond that. And I looked at like Ray Dalio's video, like I guess circa 2012, 2013, how the economic machine works. Oh yeah, okay. So there you go, there's that great big central reserve, Federal Reserve Bank right in the middle of it. And here the graphic is at a little lever called interest rates, and it moves it up and down and it controls what goes on. And this is what happens, and this is how the economy works. You know? And sure, you can understand things in terms of credit, where you've got relaxation or you've got tightening. So the money that people have to borrow is either more or less, and this drives these up and down things. As I said, the credit cycle drives the business cycle. I still didn't have any answers. I really didn't have any answers. Why do we have to have these things? And even Alan Greenspan, the great maestro of the Federal Reserve back in the 80s, by the time we got to the dawn of the 2008 bust, prior to that, they were saying, oh, he's the oracle, he's the wizard, he's the one that's conquered the business cycle. You know, we're not going to have any more busts anymore. We're not going to have any recessions anymore. And at the dawn of the 2008 credit crisis, he goes, it seems like I might have been wrong in what I thought this was all about, because, hello, greatest financial crisis we've ever seen in the world since the 30s and the Great Depression. So this is a freaking genius admitting that he was wrong. I kept trying to understand. I mean, when I was at San Joaquin Delta College, I went in the library there between 2013 and 2017, and I picked up Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. Multiple hundred pages book. I got through maybe, less than 10% of it. I put a bookmark in it, and it's probably still sitting in that same section of the library, like over 10 years later. It's just a very hard read, but I got some pieces of information out of the beginning of it, and I've learned a lot since on what other pundits have said about what he says in the basic tenets of it. And it's really basically the foundation of modern mainstream, admitted, published, what they tell you, economics, the stuff that's in the books, okay? Well, I'm here to tell you that stuff that's in the books is just a very small slice of it. And they want you to believe that it's the main part. So, a quote from The Matrix, which is a parable, an allegory, this movie, a lot of lessons to a range of spheres of life, really a prophecy of a lot of things. What was that quote? It goes something like, like the veil, you're behind the veil, and then once the veil's removed, you actually really understand the reality of what's going on, okay? And it's a horrifying reality. It's a terrible reality. It's a terrifying reality. It's a shock, horror, denial. I can't believe this type of reality. And when you really dig underneath it, it's one of what I call a series of terrible truths. Like Neo in The Matrix, when they actually tell him what the deal is, the dude's like, he comes back to his physical form and he's puking up. He just can't deal with it. He cannot deal with it. So when you discover this, I mean, it is a really difficult thing to handle, but it's to do with what as I said, I call metanomics, which is a scope that's very much larger than textbook. So Adam Smith, his book was published less than half a year, the same year that the American Revolution was concluded and this country became independent. And it was, at the time, the country had largely been what you call agrarian, which is a combination, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, combination of agriculture plus a lot of small people, small manufacturers making things, making them for themselves, selling them to themselves. It was not quite, but almost pre-industrial. So there was a lot of optimism there because it took a war to get to that point, and then the people, and that's a very important point, it took a war. And then the people got together and this idea of exceptionalism and we're special and this is a grand experiment, and now we're making it happen. And we're buying and selling to ourselves, right? And we're really making this new country a really unique thing. Well, a lot of the modern economics textbooks come from these basic ideas from Adam Smith, that it's about supply and demand curves and prices and natural levels, and people make choices that are their own self-interested choices, and everything settles at like a realistic level, and people can interact on an economic level for their own betterment, for their own good, so they can trade something that's a value that's supposed to be money, and they can get a good which helps improve their life, whether it's food or lumber to build their log cabin or whatever it is. But I'm here to tell you that we haven't had that kind of a system, an idealized system, for a very long time. So what you have, and this is a really important point I'm trying to make, what you have is you can have any system, and we've had a number of systems, and we could in future have more systems. And these are systems that sit above and beyond the basic idea of economics that they put in the textbooks and they put it all out on business media to pull the veil over you, to make you think that that is how the world works and that is how it works alone. It's beyond that. I mean, we had industrialism, which changed the demographies and changed the character of the nation. I mean, from the Titans, and I mean, love them or hate them, who built a lot of the country in the latter part of the 1800s, all the way through the 1900s, all the way up through to the World War II. You had industrialism, which brought about middle class, which brought about, all the appliances, all the conveniences, all the modern life. And then parallel to that, you had this horrible system. They tried it. It's the third time we've had it. We've had it for 120 years now. That's the third time we've had a central bank. And the founders railed against it and cancelled the thing twice. They didn't like it so much, they didn't like it, that they got rid of it. But we've had the latest one for 120 years, and a bunch of really rich people decided that they knew what was going on. They could save things. They can engineer things. They got together in an island, I think it was around about 1913 or something like that. And they secretly set this thing up. It's a private thing, it's not even a government thing. And it's the thing that controls the money. And I can just scoot to the end point with that. I mean, basically you've got banksters, not gangsters, banksters running our currency lives. And it's a very complex story, but it took a war to get rid of what happened in the Depression in the 30s, and for there to be promise to come. And luckily enough, we had demographics of the boomers, where you had enough children coming through that you could set up a system. This is, again, I want you to understand, they saw a reality and they set up a system based on catering to the large number of new people, new kids coming through. So they got all that. They got it through their growing up in the 60s. They got it through their lives in the 70s and 80s. Now they're getting it with their big rich houses and their control of politics in these years, as with their pensions in the stock market, right? With their ownership of everything. This is because of a demography and a thing that happened where you had a large swath of people coming through. And all the rest of us in different generations, we have to suffer because we're not being catered for. It's how do you hold the system up? So let me go back to what was happening with money and the debt. So you had Nixon in 71. He spent so much money on the damn Vietnam War that we couldn't even value money as a true thing anymore. You had to get off gold, which is really something that was partially connected to what they had as a Bretton Woods systems post World War II, where they made an agreement that the US would control and disseminate all the money around the world, and they set up these systems to rebuild the Marshall Plan, like the Europe after the war, which is devastated. So you had a partial gold system, but in 71, Nixon was so broke. He's like, man, we just got to get rid of gold. So then we went to what they call a fiat currency. Let's stop calling it what it is. It's not fiat, it's fake. Okay? And then in the 60s and then probably in the 80s in my home country in Australia, guess what? How else are we going to generate wealth? And it goes back to that video I was talking about catching a fish. The price of catching a fish for yourself hasn't changed ever. For yourself, hasn't changed ever. But our money is 5% down to 1% of what it was in the 1910s when the Federal Reserve was created. That's how much debasement, devaluing, what you can get for your buck has gone. Now, I'm starting to lose my train of thought here, so I want to get through. Okay, yeah, they gave me a credit card in like 1984 as a young man just starting out my first job in Australia. A bloody credit card from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, no less. So the government certainly was boots and all hands in on, they knew what they were doing. What was going on? Because the countries were broke and they were looking for a way to generate growth, and there wasn't a way to do it. So you had to have people start to borrow from their future. Bring their future forward, in other words. Okay, so this is the idea where you get to the young people of today where there's literally no future left. It all got borrowed back to then. Understand that, okay? And then you had all these other shenanigans where some of the highfalutin, like the Greenspans and the Reagans and whatever, they deconstructed the system as it was, which had protections, which had government. There was some reason for some government because they let all the banksters just go crazy. So you went from the stock market going insane down to the point now over 20, 30 years, 40 years, where the corporations own the damn homes. So there's no regulation. It all got taken away. So it's only like I talked about, like a big, long tier at the bottom and like maybe one little block up top. That's what we've got to, because they let them all go crazy, and there's a few there at the top and there's not many of us at the bottom. Sorry, there's a lot of us at the bottom. Beg your pardon. And there was a lot going on with the corporates and the corporations and the elites and oh God, I saw a leadership video from a professor from Harvard talking about what Jack Welch did to GE, and then how it became a thing throughout all of the corporations for the last 20-something years. So basically they took away the engineers, the people that built stuff that close to the ground and knew what they were doing, and they put in the financiers and the bloody accountants to run the show who knew nothing about what was happening on the factory floor. So they exported all your jobs to India in the 80s, and they said and they give you all these memes. They say, well, you've got to work harder, and you got to get smarter, and you got to continuously learn, get more and more education. You got to stay ahead of the game, right? India and China. So I mean, what do you expect? You got all these manufacturing jobs, people like in the Midwest from way back then. You've got these routes of places like Detroit, which is absolutely devastated. You got people on freaking heroin. You got the opioid epidemics. What else is a man going to do when his life and his expectations have been devastated? So, And there's a lot of it, those memes and those great cons and those great lies. I mean, if you're a young person, I mean, you saw what happened to your parents in 2008, and now it's fast forwarded to you've got so much student debt, and you're working at Starbucks, but you've got a teaching degree, you know, and you don't see any hope from the future. The point is, a lot of us other demographies and different. I was like a tail end of the boomers, so I didn't catch the wave. So I'm a person that's been disenfranchised, but all the way down the ages of people, the levels of ages of people, everybody else is fucked too. You know, you kids are fucked, but people is, I'm 63, I'm fucked. Okay, frankly. I mean, let's just admit it. But there's systems within systems on top of systems alongside systems. This is beyond just basically price levels and supply and demand curves. And if everybody just buys what they really want, I mean, that gives you a price, and everybody's going to profit and everybody's going to benefit. And it's all hunky-dory. It's all fine. You know, market economics. It's all freaking bullshit. Because what happens with the money and the politics and the systems and the corporations, and how the government just, look, we've got to find some way to get growth. Let's call it GDP, right? And as long as we can get a number in there somewhere that looks good, and we got it from somewhere, whether it was an Indian or a Chinese got your job, right? Now they don't even have jobs. And guess what? Why? Why is China crashing? Because we don't have any money to buy their shit, okay? It's demand. In other words, they broke us so far down, they took all our income, they took all our future prospects, they gave it away to these guys. Now we can't buy their shit, so it's a circle. It's like a circle of life, if you will. Now we're broke, so now they're in a freaking depression, which is the one we're about to get. So let me get really to the end of this before I run out of time to do the video. It's the Metanomics, stupid. That's a paraphrase or an alteration of a claim that was made during the Clinton era administration when they were trying to get re-elected, I think. And it really comes down to not just the money, the economy, but it comes down to the systems upon systems. So I'm getting to a point where I'm trying to get the point through to you that we've had systems. And we'll change systems. And this isn't about, if you're a young person, you're listening, it's not about socialism, Marxism. That's a reaction. It's a reaction to the fact that capitalism has never been, in probably 3 of our lifetimes, what it was promised to be. It's been distorted, it's been manipulated, it's been twisted. It's banksterism. And it's all of the other politicians and elites that feed into it. It's all their benefit at the expense of you. And also because they're flailing around trying to find something that just keeps the thing running. Keeps it running, like all the stimulus they did after they locked you down, which is an insane thing. Keep it running. But now we're down the downslope of a supply side crisis where everything is a mess because what goes up has to go down, usually a lot worse. So it's Metanomics, it's systems. And if there's any message I want you to take, I like after 25 years of trying to understand this stuff, I still don't really get, I'm not the genius I ought to be. There are very smart people out there who are good people that could sort this out. And it really comes down to the system that is contrived, architected and made above and beyond conventional economics, so that encompasses conventional economics. If there's anything you can learn from this video, that we've had systems and we could have more systems, and it's man. It's not a biological thing, it's not a Darwinian thing, it's not a competitive thing, it's not like everybody has to lose all the time. We could create a system that sits above the conventional economics that would benefit everybody. It's not socialism, it's not Marxism, it's not classical capitalism, because that was from an agrarian era. It's not distorted capitalism we've had for 40, 60 years. It's some form of capitalism, but it's radically different from the capitalism we have. So what I want you to take away from this video is how is it we get to a positive future by architecting a new system? And am I smart enough to be one of the people that's going to help make that happen?